All right, so you've been watching the crypto markets, right? You're seeing what's happening with Ethereum and Bitcoin, all those price moves, and you've noticed something a little, well, off. ETH just isn't keeping up with BTC like it used to. So that's exactly what we're going to unpack in this deep dive today. Why is Ethereum's price lagging behind Bitcoin? That's the big question. As of, let's see, today is March 31st, 2025.
Yeah, and you know what? We've got a ton of interesting information to go through today. Everything from a big picture overview to like a really granular breakdown of all the details. And what we're going to try to do here is pull out those crucial pieces for you. Help you understand exactly why we're seeing this performance gap.
Exactly. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's just set the stage with some actual numbers. As we speak, Ethereum is trading somewhere between $1,800 and $1,900. But Bitcoin's way up there, sitting pretty between $80,000 and $90,000.
Big difference.
A huge difference. So if you do the math, that puts the ETH to BTC ratio at about, let me see, 0.022. And that's the thing that's really grabbing everyone's attention, this ratio. It's at its lowest point in almost 5 years. And when you think about it, it's been as high as 0.1475 BTC per ETH in the past. It really shows how much ETH is underperforming right now. We need to figure out why.
We do. And, one thing that really jumps out from all the stuff we've been looking at is how much stronger Bitcoin has been performing overall. And a lot of that seems to be because of, well, a huge amount of demand from big institutional investors. The big players are jumping in.
Right, the institutions.
Yeah. And over just the past year, Bitcoin's seen gains of about 171%. And you compare that to Ethereum, which is at 62%, it's a pretty stark difference.
It is. So let's break down why Bitcoin has been on this incredible run. What's fueling those big gains?
Well, a big part of it, I think, is how people see Bitcoin. Yeah. It's got this solid reputation as a store of value. It's like digital gold. But honestly, I think what's really changed the game is the approval of those spot Bitcoin ETFs. They basically made it so much easier for institutions to put big money into Bitcoin.
You're talking about the really big players, right? Like the pension funds, the huge asset managers. An ETF makes it so straightforward for them to invest in Bitcoin.
Well, yeah.
Boom, they're in. So who are these institutions driving all these ETF inflows? What's their thinking behind putting all this money into Bitcoin?
Well, the data is pretty clear. There's a ton of institutional interest in Bitcoin. And for the week ending March 21st, 2025, the net inflow into BTC ETFs was a massive $744.4 million.
Wow.
And just to show you how hungry these institutions are, BlackRock's iShares Trust, the ticker's IBIT, they alone pulled in $537.5 million of those inflows. That's a huge chunk of change flowing straight into Bitcoin.
So massive. So that ETF approval was like a green light. Just open the floodgates for institutional money to pour into Bitcoin.
Yep.
Now, how does that compare to Ethereum? We'll get into ETFs in a bit. But is there anything else that stands out as contributing to Bitcoin's stronger performance?
Yeah, I think there might be something to the perception that Bitcoin is, I don't know, maybe more mature, less complex. When there's uncertainty in the market, investors often go for what they feel is the safest bet in a particular asset class.
Makes sense. Safety first. So it sounds like Bitcoin's got this narrative, this history, plus easy access through ETFs is giving it a real edge. Now, what about macroeconomics? How are those global trends affecting the ETH versus BTC dynamic?
Well, it's fascinating how macroeconomic conditions can affect Ethereum and Bitcoin so differently. Take the technology stock market, for example. How well that market is doing has a much bigger impact on ETH than on BTC.
Right, because Ethereum is all about tech, right? It's the platform for all those decentralized applications, the dApps and the smart contracts that power them. If tech stocks are doing well, it could mean good things for how much people use and adopt Ethereum's technology.
Exactly. And the data shows that the tech stock market has been, well, pretty mixed lately, kind of volatile. The S&P 500 communication services and information technology sector, it was actually down more than 4% in the year leading up to early March 2025. That kind of uncertainty, that dip in the tech sector, it could be holding Ethereum back.
Interesting. So Bitcoin might be protected by its, digital gold status. But Ethereum, being more connected to the tech world, it's more vulnerable to those swings in the economy.
Yeah.
What about the US dollar? Where does that fit into all of this?
We got to look at the US dollar index, the DXY. That's a key piece of this puzzle. It's been pretty stable lately, around 104.01. But it has been weakening a little bit. And when there's economic uncertainty or the dollar weakens, assets like Bitcoin, they tend to do well.
Yeah.
Investors see them as a safe haven. something decentralized and scarce.
Right. It's that flight to safety when things get uncertain. And Ethereum, because it's tied to these riskier tech ventures, might not get that same benefit. A stronger dollar could actually hurt it, you know? Like less global investment in tech overall.
Exactly. It's a really delicate balance. And, while Bitcoin's pulling in all this institutional money with its ETFs, Ethereum's picture is completely different, isn't it?
It is. Let's talk about that. The demand for spot Bitcoin ETFs versus spot Ethereum ETFs. There's a huge difference there. Can you walk us through the numbers?
Sure. I mean, the numbers really tell the story. In just the first 30 days after spot Bitcoin ETFs were approved, they raked in a whopping $47 billion.
47 billion.
$47 billion. Now, spot Ethereum ETFs, they were launched a bit later, in July 2024. And since then, their total inflows have been about $1 billion.
Wow, so it's 47 billion compared to 1 billion. Talk about a difference in scale. That's really where the big money's going.
It really is. And even though Ethereum ETFs did have one big day with $428.5 million flowing in, the overall demand and whether that demand will keep up, well, it just hasn't matched what we've seen with Bitcoin ETFs. There's definitely less long-term institutional interest in ETFs right now.
So even though ETFs exist for both, they're not having the same effect on Ethereum's price. It seems like the institutions just aren't as interested. So stepping away from these big market trends and institutional flows, what about the Ethereum network itself? Anything going on internally that could explain why it's lagging behind?
Well, the interesting thing is that the sources point to some positives for Ethereum at the network level. Its transaction fees are actually quite competitive, around 0.00001 ETH per transaction. And it's got staking rewards, too, which is basically like earning interest on your Ethereum. Those rewards are between 2% and 3% APY,
Okay.
annual percentage yield. And those are pretty healthy fundamentals for a network, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. So it's not like high fees or low rewards are scaring investors away.
No, not according to what we've seen. But here's the thing. Ethereum's main strength, its smart contract capabilities, and that whole universe of decentralized applications built on it, it might actually make it more sensitive to market ups and downs than Bitcoin. Bitcoin's just digital gold, right? But with Ethereum, if the market takes a hit, demand for those applications could drop, and that could impact how people value ETH.
That's a really interesting point. Its strength, its versatility, all those applications, it could also be a weakness when the market gets shaky. Now, looking ahead, there's the Pectra upgrade coming up for Ethereum. How's that playing into the current price action?
Yeah, the Pectra upgrade, which is supposed to happen in April 2025, that's definitely on everyone's radar. It's supposed to improve how staking works and make the network more scalable, handle more transactions. Those are good things for Ethereum in the long run.
Yeah, more efficient staking, better scalability, those should boost the price eventually. So why might it be causing problems now?
Well, they've had some delays and issues with the test networks, specifically Holinsky and Sepolia. When those tests run into trouble, it makes investors nervous. Any sign that the upgrade might be delayed even more, or that it might not work as smoothly as planned, it kind of dampens the excitement and can lead to the price dropping in the short term.
Right, it's the fear of the unknown. The sources say the main network activation is still planned for early to mid-April 2025, so hopefully they'll stick to that and fix those testnet issues. But I get why investors might be hesitant when they see delays.
Absolutely. We don't really know how much those delays are affecting investor confidence, but it's something to keep in mind when looking at the price right now. And there's something else in the data that's really interesting.
What?
Well, it's almost a paradox. Despite all the big upgrades they've made, like the Denkan upgrade in 2024, which was supposed to make things smoother and cheaper on Layer 2 networks, Ethereum's price against Bitcoin is at its lowest point in nearly 5 years.
That is surprising. I mean, you'd think those upgrades would make the price go up, not down.
You would.
Yeah.
But what it shows is that how the market feels and where that institutional money is flowing, those things matter more than just technical improvements.
It's like the market isn't really paying attention to the progress, at least not right now. The sources even mentioned a CoinDesk analysis saying that this current market cycle, which started back in November 2022, has been Ethereum's worst performance against Bitcoin in a bull market since Ethereum came out in 2015.
Wow.
And apparently, each cycle has had smaller returns than the one before. That's a pretty big deal. It shows how the relationship between these two giants is changing.
Yeah, it does. It might be a hint in the whole market, how investors see things, maybe Bitcoin's story as digital gold, and the fact that institutions are gobbling it up through ETFs. Maybe that's just more convincing right now than all of Ethereum's tech and its applications.
Interesting. So, bringing it all back home, what does this mean for the crypto world in general? And what does it mean for you listening to this deep dive?
Well, Ethereum's struggling right now,
Hmm.
and that really highlights how much the market wants Bitcoin as a store of value, especially with all the economic uncertainty out there. Investors want something safe and established,
Yeah.
and Bitcoin, especially with easy access through ETFs, that's what they're choosing.
And Ethereum being so connected to the tech world and not seeing as much ETF love, it's just not as attractive right now, even with all the cool stuff it can do.
Right. This whole trend, it could change how people invest in crypto going forward. Bitcoin might become that core holding, a long-term investment for anyone who wants exposure to digital assets.
Hmm.
And if Ethereum wants to catch up, it's going to have to nail those upgrades, like
Right.
Pectra. It needs to show that it works, that it's stable, and it needs to attract those big institutions through ETFs.
Right. So, to wrap up our deep dive here, Ethereum's lagging behind Bitcoin, and there are a few reasons why. Bitcoin's been on a tear, fueled by its reputation as digital gold and all that institutional money flowing into those spot BTC ETFs. Ethereum, on the other hand, is more tied to the ups and downs of the tech sector, and it's not seeing the same kind of ETF enthusiasm. Now, while things look pretty good for ETH on the network side, those delays with the Pectra upgrade are adding to the uncertainty.
And don't forget that big takeaway. The fact that Ethereum is underperforming even with all those upgrades, that tells us how much the market's mood and institutional money really drive prices.
Definitely food for thought. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Bitcoin's seen as this digital gold, while Ethereum is building the foundation for all these decentralized applications. What will it take to change the balance of power? What could happen to make Ethereum take the lead? Something to think about as we watch this crypto landscape keep evolving.